Call the
I
meeting to
started with one
order.
of those.
Okay.
I,
Call the meeting to order and the minutes, there's one correction. Ken Anderson nominated Franklin Hahn for chairman. I don't know if there's any other corrections. Does anybody want see anything else or corrections or additions? And time to read the minutes, I'm assuming. If there wasn't any, then in a motion to accept the minutes as corrected.
move.
Second,
Second.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. All right, so we'll have roll call, I guess,
Ken Bisker.
Here.
Franklin Hahn.
here.
Ken Anderson.
Here.
Ken Running.
Here.
Jim Weezer.
Here. I guess the next order of business is to read the notice.
Notice of public hearing. Please take notice that an application was received from the following persons for a variance of setback requirements. Tony and Susan Drehaus for part of the southwest quarter, the northwest quarter, lying south of Road Section 8, Township 101, Range 4, Houston County, Minnesota, parcel 0700190000. Jefferson Township. First is a variance. Number one is a variance to reduce side yard setback requirements for an existing accessory structure, section 14.8, subdivision 1. Number two is a variance to reduce side yard setback requirements for a proposed accessory structure addition, section 14.8, subdivision 1. A hearing on this application will be held at the Houston County Commissioner's Room, City of Caledonia, Minnesota, at 5 p.m. on Thursday, February 22nd, 2024. All persons having an interest in the matter will be given the opportunity to submit comments relative to the granting or denying of said application. Comments should be mailed to the Environmental Services Department, 304 South Marshall Street, Caledonia, Minnesota, 55921, or emailed to martin.herrick@co.houston.mn.us. Must be received by Tuesday, February 13th, 2024. Comments in regard to petition received by this date will be part of the public record and will be made available for review by the Board of Adjustment prior to the meeting. Houston County Board of Adjustment by Martin Herrick, zoning administrator.
Okay. So the applicant, you want to come up and take a seat here, please? And kind of explain to the board what you're doing, so on and so forth. They'll have some questions
Okay.
afterwards.
Okay, I bought this 6 acres from Paul Bauer and there's a 40 by 40 existing building on it. And I wanted to add a shop to it. Something I could heat, something 10 feet tall instead of this is 16 with a vault. And it's not insulated, the existing building. So when I got to laying out a building, I wanted to get it 30 feet deep so I could back a boat in. And I come to find out that property line was a little over 65 feet away. And I found out the setbacks. That's why I'm here. The backside, I was thinking about putting, I've been in the construction business for 40 years building whole buildings. So and I was gonna put 30 feet on the back end of this building. And it drops off.
I was there, I saw it.
Oh, man. If I go 30 feet back, it gets terrible. And then not only the building, it's trying to get a road to that side door I want to put on it. So that's why I wanted to slide it up along that sidewall 15 feet of the 30.
It looks like in 2014, when they permitted the original building, it looks like they brought in fill.
Yep.
And then they dumped it, but the slope was also going down too. So the combination of the two starts to make a pretty impressive.
If you notice when you're out there, that houseboat is going away and this, it kind of will fit right there.
Yeah.
Was there in 2014, was that the setback was legit when they got a building permit?
Yes,
back then?
yeah, it's 65 feet.
Then I thought about putting it on the west side. I've been noodling about this thing since we started, but I just thought about putting it on the west side. But I have to tear out that whole feedlot pad and the site that just drops off of that.
Although, you know what, the little accessory building was within, they didn't grant a variance for the little accessory building that was the property split.
Oh, you mean the other part of the
So-
variance? Yeah.
So part of it was correct and part of it was.
So the, explain what the accessory. what
There's
was the
this-
deal? Did they have to have a permit for the accessory building at that time?
They didn't. They should have addressed the fact that that was too close to the setback, you know, it's only 7 feet. From the property line, and that was created as a result of the split.
When did the split take place?
I think it was probably in the 1990s, but accessory buildings. Would that have needed
No.
at that time? Yeah. So the split created the division,
As far back as I can look, that little building was on,
yeah,
and then they re-steel or covered with steel. Now
Yeah.
it's nice looking. building.
yeah, that's one, I wrote it up, I just said we can't figure out what the age of it is.
Yeah,
But we're pretty sure it was probably pre-2004 where it actually needed a permit.
oh, for sure, because there's
I
a,
mean,
There's
but
a
on
lot
the
of
other hand, the
variation.
split got so close to it that you run into it.
You're saying that they should have addressed the variance for the smaller building when they got the permit for the.
I'm thinking probably,
larger
yeah.
building?
Say it again.
Well, the previous building administrator handled things. I don't think that was looked at the. They just looked strictly at the building they were permitting, not at bringing the whole site.
And there still wasn't anything in place then to prevent this kind of situation. As there supposedly is now. When you do splits.
We still don't have.
we still don't have this in place.
We've done a lot of education, though, and I think
We try,
I know. It could be done.
and it is done. I mean, there are counties that are reviewing property splits.
And we don't.
this is staff.
I mean, it's
I get it. I've been hammering on this for so long. I'm tired of it.
it's a big deal.
That's all, it seems like that's all we deal with here is
A lot.
these kinds of splits and variances, and it just seems so pointless.
It's a fair amount of it, yeah.
I guess my biggest concern when I looked at this addition is it's not the building itself as much as the way the door is or your entry to the new part. Because you're crowding the property line with that. You typically need about 20 feet in front of that also to just have a vehicle.
I'll
Or
have
get,
35.
be about 30, yeah, I see that. So you're in, it's,
You mean that back overhead door?
yeah,
I've got
that
on there?
overhead door. To me, it would be nicer if that went the other side. Where you have a bigger property, but I drove by there on Sunday, but I didn't really get out to look at the property.
On the west side? You mean the
Yeah,
other
to go to the
corner?
west side. I
Yeah.
don't know whether you could even work a door in that side or not.
It would take a lot of fill
Okay,
to get even close to where,
and here, even your drawing shows that you need fill almost to get it leveled there too.
if I step it down 2 feet the way the
Yeah,
drawing
okay,
is,
that's.
I'll
what
be
you're doing.
okay.
Yeah,
I think that's about. See that picture?
Yeah.
About where the, pretty close. That's why I stepped it down.
Yeah.
Without. Piling any more in there.
Well, it's kind of hard to find new property owners for not getting a permit or splitting the property. In my way of thinking, because it wasn't the new property owner's fault. I don't know how we correct
right,
it,
right.
you know.
You never had.
You know, that's, I guess, maybe my concern about this with the door too is, you know, if the properties are sold, all of a sudden you got a different property owner who may have a problem.
Yeah.
You know, because your access into that is going to be really crowding that property.
that-
That's my bigger concern.
Is that an issue? Access?
That's a,
No, I mean,
No,
in terms,
oh, road, a
in
setback.
terms of setbacks. So access,
A road you could get within, all to the property.
okay. So it's not illegal to have,
No, but we're dealing with a setback already.
right?
And normally, if it was on just back wall or a side wall, I wouldn't have as much of a concern. But you're talking a place where you're trying to back in a vehicle or boat, is what he said. And it takes room.
Mhm. Or.
there's nothing there except,
The rest of it, it looks like it's basically open field.
yeah, I talked to, Andy's the other owner.
But
He and I
if
were
you have a new owner there,
Yep,
he can't build within 50 feet of that property line either.
Right.
But then they can put a fence there and everything like that if they want.
Then all of a sudden you're gonna need a little tractor or something like that to try and back something in.
into my door.
Yeah,
Like I will anyway.
okay. You know, I mean, if you had a smaller vehicle that was your tow vehicle, that would get you a little bit of money, but not all.
I'm not so sure. I don't know how much I'll use that door, to be honest. with you. But I wanted it to be able to back a pontoon. Sure, I ever had one. I thought it'd be a good spot for one anyway.
Question, did you get any comments from the public?
I did get one comment from your neighbor, Bells,
Yes.
and they basically asked what are they doing, and I replied back to them. And then I sent them a copy of, it was actually this, of the pages that were on from the applicant's submittal, so they saw the diagrams and stuff like that, and there was, you know, more response. So.
Questions? Questions before we do-
Maybe there's something about the U-shaped driveway there that it was concerned. You highlighted it.
Yeah, what I noted is that it looks like, you know, it's a U-shaped driveway. And then the primary one is certainly on you, but then the other outlet appears to be on the neighbor.
It is. Yep.
So,
That, I think you had it worked out. Uncle, nephew.
yeah,
And they don't,
there was a relative connection in the previous.
On the
owners.
previous, yeah.
Yeah.
Again, that can be a problem with changes of ownership.
yeah, I don't need to use it. I don't. Okay. So
And you have a better elevation on your primary one than you do on the other.
it's just there.
More questions? If not, well, we can ask questions later too. If you want. Sure. Through the findings. Yeah. right.
Okay, number one, the variance request is in harmony with the intent and purpose of official controls. Staff analysis, the structures are allowed in the agricultural protection district. The owner is cleaning up the site and proposes to efficiently fit the addition to the existing terrain as shown above in figure 3. The rehabilitation of the parcel structure preserves prime agricultural land, which is a goal of comprehensive land use plan.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Yeah,
Number 2, there are practical difficulties in complying with the official controls, and the proposed use of the property is reasonable. Economic considerations alone do not constitute practical difficulties. Staff analysis, creating larger setbacks between both structures would involve the acquisition of additional land, which necessitates a willing seller.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Yeah,
Number 3, the variance requests are due to special conditions or circumstances unique to the property and not created by the property owner. Staff analysis, the property split and the site terrain limit placement of structures which are special conditions not created by the property owner.
All in favor, say aye.
I,
Opposed? Yeah,
Number four, the variances cannot be alleviated by a reasonable method other than variance, and the minimum variance which would alleviate the practical difficulty is sought. Staff analysis, the board may find that the variances related to the proposed addition and the existing accessory structure are the only way to feasibly resolve the side yard setback issues, and that the variances are the minimum variance that would alleviate the practical difficulty of limited buildable space and a property split not created by the current owner of the property.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Number five, the variances will not alter the essential character of the locality nor substantially impair property values or the public health, safety, or welfare in the vicinity. Staff analysis, granting the variances will not have a negative impact on the criteria listed above. Additionally, the expanded shop is not anticipated to have any effect on the above criteria. The proposed structure will not have septic connections.
All in favor, say aye.
I,
Opposed? Yeah,
Number six, the request is not a use variance and shall not have the effect of allowing any use that is not allowed in the zoning district. Permit a lower degree of flood protection than the regulatory flood protection elevation, or permit standards lower than those required by Minnesota state law. Staff analysis, the granting of the variances to the side yard setback requirements in the ag protection district does not conflict with any restricted uses. There is no map floodplain on the parcel. There are no known state standards applicable to the request.
all in favor, say aye.
I,
Opposed? Motion to accept the findings.
so move.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Motion is carried. Is there any other questions from the board before we move on?
Just curious about, if you have a property to a road, you don't have to have a larger approach to your driveway or
He's
anything
not
like that.
changing, he's not changing his existing. driveway.
Yeah, it's not to the road. I mean, you realize that, but I'm so concerned about that exit out of the shop on so close.
You're
the
allowed to
property
go
line.
to the property line with the road.
Yeah.
Because there isn't a setback for it. Okay. Which some people do. Like, when you don't see it a lot in the ag protection district, but you see it in the residential district.
Right,
Where
right.
people will run them right up to the line. Or pretty amazingly close.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
If you look at this deal, the front of that boat is about where that door is.
Okay, that's what I was kind of
And that
thinking.
road is kind of
I mean,
there already.
And I'm realizing you got roughly, if we grant the variance, you're looking at 32 feet, and I've always been saying, with the open field is 25 is adequate, but then you're talking about 15, 20 feet for access in front of the part of my concern.
If you're backing up with a pickup and
Yeah.
you better be good at driving.
I mean, it's just no doubt there. But I don't know if there's any better alternative either, because, the other side of the opposite side of it is probably too steep.
I am glad to see he's cleaning it up and, working on moving stuff through.
Eat stuff. There was a
we
gravity
do 'em
box
both-
I couldn't
do 'em-
find. I knew I had one.
Can we do both of them together,
Yeah.
variant together, or just each one?
We usually do them together, don't we?
Yeah, you want me to read the recommendation?
Okay, go ahead and read it.
Proposed motion, grant the following variances. One, variance of 18 feet to reduce the side yard setback requirements for the proposed addition to the existing shop from the east property line. Number two, variance of 43 feet to reduce side yard setback requirements for an accessory storage building to the north property.
And I'll make the motion to accept those recommendations.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Oh, I'm gonna have roll call.
Okay. Ken Bister,
Aye.
Franklin Hahn,
Aye.
Ken Anderson.
Aye.
Tony Flanagan.
Aye.
Jim Weezer.
Aye.
All right, this, we'll have to work with the office if they need you to work with them, so to approve. Before we adjourn today, I would like to discuss a little bit. I did a little research on how we can change some of these ordinances. What I was told, and you correct me if I'm wrong, you don't have to say if you don't want to.
That's kind
You're
of.
welcome to say it.
Two, if you want.
I'm not- I'm not kidding.
Nobody cares what I'm gonna say. Thank you for your time. Yeah. Thanks, I think it'll clean it up. Yeah.
What I found out, and you correct me if I'm wrong, Martin, is that in order to put an ordinance, change an ordinance in the county, it has to be presented from the zoning board. Then it has to be in the paper for 2 weeks, public, and you have to have a public hearing. Then it will go to the commission. Ken Visser has brought this up before. And I'm not saying the board should go after this change, but in my opinion, we have two of them that bothers me. One is the feedlot, which we've talked about, you know, when you have a feedlot that's a registered feedlot, even though there's no cattle in there now. Somebody builds a house, which Ken Anderson has told us what happened to him. We'd have to change the ordinance to protect that feedlot owner. So that he or she don't have to jump through hoops to get, if they were ever to put cattle in.
Or expand.
Right,
Well, minor expansion.
right. And the other thing that bugs me, and maybe I'm the only one, I'm asking the board on the opinion. When a contractor, and we talked about it last meeting, a contractor comes in, builds a building or a solar panel without a permit, the landowner doesn't have a permit, and if you see the ordinances on the front page there, you see how that's worded. That's worded, in my opinion, as lawyers' terminology, because if you read it, you folks probably read it, if you read it on there, it's okay, any person, firm, or corporation and or both landowners and contractors who shall violate any of the previous hereof, or who shall make any false statement in any document required to be submitted under previous hereof shall be subject to a penalty under the ordinance. The contractor, comma, owner, comma, person, comma, firm or corporation that begins an activity or a project requiring a zoning permit without first securing said zoning permit shall be subject to the normal application fees. But my point is here now, who are you gonna go after here? Because that's where I come up with this. Am I reading this wrong? That they're involving everybody and nobody except the landowner is responsible? Or am I reading something in here that is?
Way it looks to me.
Well, that's what I wanted to discuss.
I had this conversation with my wife and I told her what was going on and she said, well, why didn't the contractor get the permit? Mine did. I didn't know anything about a requirement for a solar permit. He just went and got it. So obviously there's some, I would agree, there's some responsibility for contractors at the very least to inform and at the very most to get the permit themselves. I didn't get it, my contractor did. So, yeah, I agree. I think that.
Well, it would
there's-
make our job a little bit easier is what I'm getting at, eliminate some of these problems. But maybe I'm all wrong here, but how would you, if this was to be changed, this is just throwing this out as that the contractor had to come in to the zoning office to make sure that there was a permit before they could build. How would we communicate with the contractors so that they would know they had to come in?
We have them split the fee,
Well,
put the money on them.
under septic stuff. there's your license.
Yes, but correct me if I'm wrong, but under septic stuff, the license, they're licensed with the state.
Right.
And they have to abide by the state specs,
Well,
right?
where I'm going with it is if a violation were to occur. And well, it's probably making life worse. Would there be the potential to lose your license if you had so many violations or something like that? And I'm like,
I think the contractors are kind of like, right?
right,
Happy, but I guess I was just, I was kind of like, under, that was part of what.
and a lot of times the contract that you probably got, to build. Some of them will spell out, they'll address the situation, because they'll come back the other direction and say, if I can't get a license. Then.
Permit.
Then permit, then the contract is void.
Well, see, I mentioned this last month, it wasn't here, but the 2 buildings I built, which I mentioned last month. Before they ever started the building, on the see my building,
Exactly.
one was in Fillmore County, one was in Houston.
Right.
But if this, like I repeat again, if this ordinance was changed, how are we gonna enforce it?
The problem, when we had one a while, probably 2 or 3 years ago, where the woman didn't understand that a permit was required. Contractor came in, built a building, we allowed it to stand, but it was not in compliance, and it didn't have a permit. And so the only way that I see this, and we're talking just permits here, the only way that I see this working is you got to find a way to punish the contractors who don't pull permits, or at the very least don't inform homeowners that they've got, or builder, people that the landowner that they have to have a permit. As it is, we penalize the landowner all the time, and I don't know if we have the right to do it to the contractor or not, but unless you hit them in their pocketbook, they're not going to care.
Great.
And triple probably is.
Maybe, and for contractors, because they ought to know better, it's not enough. Landowners, we hit them triple, and a lot of times they don't know better. They do it out of ignorance.
Yeah, no, the rules are not, they're tricky.
Yeah.
Would you go after the contractor after the fact that's been built?
Potentially, I mean, I'd have to read it about 6 times.
It's kind of like what we dealt with the planning commission as far as, the real estate agent sells the properties. And either claims that there's a buildable lot on there, or there is not a buildable lot on there, but it's up to the buyer to beware.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I just had a call the other day with the realtor, and she's like, can you give me this laundry list of everything I have to check off for my buildable lot? And she goes, but I don't want to give you a set of plans to show you what the building's gonna like. And I'm like, I gotta see something here. Oh, really? And I'm like, yeah, really.
Well, you folks bring up a good point. If the contractor doesn't have bond money, how is the county gonna go after?
That's part of the game, right?
Should a person talk to Sam Yunt, our attorney, and see what he says about some of these questions? I don't know. I'm asking.
If we know who the contractors are that are working in the area, that they need to be notified somehow that they need.
Right. I mean, just as a side note, on the solar panels, what's interesting is my youngest stepdaughter works for Xcel. And she's the one who decides, she works on payment for solar panel energy credits. And they're pretty mad. They have a list of contractors that they don't like. I'm not gonna name the names.
And they don't like them because
they don't get their permits.
okay.
They have a pattern.
Oh,
of doing.
okay.
And she's like, guess what? We are not gonna get the energy credit until you get your permit straightened out. So that's another way to kind of get, because I mean, that could.
We don't have that luxury though. The building's already up. We're coming in after the fact.
Right.
Yeah.
But it brings up.
Well, could you ask the county attorney if in fact we have as a board, the luxury of assigning a penalty to contractors when there's been no permit?
Sure.
And if we can split or split the fee or fine contractors for those kinds of situations, the word is going to get out pretty quickly. And if they don't pay, pretty soon they don't get permits. You know, I mean, we can have a penalty that way too. I don't know, just ask him. If that seems, see what he says. Does that make sense to anybody?
I mean,
Well, another thing, on that last triple the fee, it ended up being $900.
right,
And if he would have done everything legally, it would have cost him 800. So he only paid $100.
there's,
Should have been, and I didn't see that.
I'd have to go back and
Rather
look at everything, but for the variance.
But the
Did he
variance
pay
was
the by
waived.
46? I didn't mean
That one was, I'm trying to think of what was going on in that. Was,
Well, my motion was to waive the variance
Right.
fee.
Right.
To triple the $300 fee, so it ended up. What I thought was $900. But the permit fee and the variance fee, if he'd have done it the right way, would have cost $800.
yes,
Then
yeah,
Then-
846, right.
$100 or less.
Well, that
What
was in
did-
addition.
But that's because you waived the variance fee.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep.
And there, we didn't waive that, we waived the triple the fee option you had. But he still got charged for a base level variance.
So
Okay,
what
so
does
what
this
did he
total
do?
out? Okay,
Okay, then.
then
that
we're,
did-
we're good. One comment, just a comment, when you talk to Samyant, you ask him if the ordinance was changed so that both the landowner and the contractor built a structure, solar panel, what have you, without a permit. And you couldn't collect from the contractor because he wouldn't pay if that additional fee could be added to the property owner. There's always a way to get that from the property owner, because you can put it on their taxes.
I think what you're getting at, and I don't think I can use the term correctly, but it's called several liability. There's what's
Okay.
called joint and several liability. And that's, they use it in environmental cleanups where they go after anybody that's got any money.
Okay,
Because a lot of times there's lots of bankruptcies and various other things going on. And they're like, whoever's got a deep pocket, they start grabbing. And so if you can get linked to it something, so you'll hear somebody doesn't want to be named as a responsible party. Well, they don't care whether you were only 5% to the project, even though somebody else was 95%. If you've got enough to cover it, you're in. And so they, yeah, I can bring up the issue of that liability, yeah.
well, maybe
Well,
open
and-
a can of worms here.
No,
Makes sense to me.
I'll text, I'll put together, an email and get a response from Sam. Although usually his response is whatever you can defend. It's like,
That's his job.
We can check with other towns, see if they have anything, what works well, what doesn't. And maybe we can bring options back to.
Good.
For
Yeah.
any decision that-
Makes sense.
Well, here's a question, looking at that issue we did last month with the solar panels. What criteria would there be to actually have them move it?
Well, I brought that up.
Rather than give the variance?
I brought that up, it would have been $1,600 to move it, remember? Is what he said it would cost to move it.
Okay.
He thought, but then there's the wiring issue, because when you go with a wiring, you don't just splice into that kind of wire. You have to have the whole length. So no, you bring a good point up. It's
And then solar access.
And Ken talked about that structure that you allowed after the facts, you know. What criteria would we have to actually force somebody to move a building?
we had.
Have you ever done it?
I don't, well, I've been on the board, we haven't. We have the authority.
Yeah.
The decision we make, which you probably know, the decision that the board makes here, county commissioners can't overrule us,
Oh, that's
you maybe know that.
I can sue.
If somebody took us to court, and correct me if I'm wrong. If somebody took this board to court, they wouldn't go after us. Because like Martin says, we don't have deep enough pockets, they'd go after the county, am I right?
Well, I mean, ask an attorney, but they're usually like, they throw it on the wall and see wherever it sticks. But in theory, that you are insulated as a member of the board. You know.
Whether we got money or not,
Yeah,
we're
we're
okay.
Covered by the county.
Right.
Yep, that's what
Right.
happened first.
And then you'll get into the procedure. Then they'll get into, well, is the notice done correctly?
Due process.
Read correctly, and then they'll try to pick apart every part of the procedure, either get it thrown out or validated depending on what their purpose was. And so they'll chop into every little bit of it. You know, did we do a roll call? Did we do this? Did we do that?
No, I didn't wanna run them along with anybody else.
So where are we at now? What are we gonna do?
I will certainly write, I'll put together an email to Sam. And I'll say like, try to give us some advice, and we can certainly talk with Jay Squires too.
And while we're at it, can you go to other counties and find out what they do with splits so we can prevent all of these setbacks?
Go and didn't get very far.
Well, let's try it again. I mean,
And so for a while there, just wasn't a good
Okay.
time.
can you get some more information now?
Get parcel split review process.
That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about changing setback numbers. I'm just talking about,
Even if you can catch the news.
We're never gonna
that's a-
get away
that's a
from
big
it totally because
Wasn't-
we have been split already.
oh, I know, but for the
You
future.
know,
Wasn't
I
that
don't-
idea to?
I don't want my children.
Neighbors okayed it?
yeah,
You didn't have to go
rather
through the
not have
variance
to,
process?
You know, someone
Right.
splits the
There
property
are-
and,
A
you know,
few instances
can still
like
do it.
that with mine.
and if you
Right.
do split
Yeah.
it and you're
That
not
you can
working with
get
variance, you have
the
to get a variance.
Authorization to
When
encroach.
you split.
within the-
Right, but that's not the
It's
case
usually
now.
not very
No,
well.
that's what it should be.
Yeah.
Right.
But that's not in the ordinance,
There is with quarries.
okay,
They do have, if both sides agree to it, and we had that with underpass.
okay.
That both sides did agree with it, that you could encroach into that 50-foot zone. So that's one example that if both sides said, okay, you could do it.
Even though it would affect subsequent owners.
In that case, it was specific to a mining activity,
I know, but,
but yeah, right.
and we granted that, or
It's in the ordinance.
it's in the ordinance.
Yeah.
Even though a subsequent owner may suffer from that?
They could, because I mean, because like in the mine, it's.
Sure.
You'd be able to drive.
So suddenly you got a cliff right at your property line.
Well, and we did agree on an elevation across, but, right,
That doesn't make sense to me, but
Oh, it's also been kicked around to change the setback down. I know one person had approached me and said, well, you give variance up to within a foot from the property line and 5 feet from the property line, so we should pass an ordinance that you can encroach up to 5 feet for a setback. Well, if the county ordinance was 5 feet, you're gonna have 4-foot overhang on your shed and the water's gonna run on a neighbor, you know, that's a tough call to put in my opinion, put an ordinance so you can go within 5 feet from. There's exceptions possibly, that the board here or the next board or the previous board feels it's justifiable to grant
I
that.
think in the
That's what we're here for.
residential or whatever that.
Well,
that's
residential
different zoning,
15,
yeah. But then
realize
you're talking only, what, 20 feet or
15,
15? It's a side yard setback, but it's still 50 on the backyard.
right? But then there are instances where you can encroach on that too,
Right.
with accessory structures if they don't occupy a certain percentage of the backyard.
But in the essence of it, we have, in a residential, we have a lot closer setback. I think realistically, it's, if we went to a 25, if it's open land, I wouldn't have as much problem. If you have a neighbor there, the 100 feet between buildings, you know, if neighbor and buildings, I think is appropriate.
Realize you also have setback, that there is an allowance for averaging. If, say in a residential area, the other houses line up and they're closer, you can average with them. So in some instances, there is this ability to bring your front yard setback, match up with the others.
Sure.
There's all of these exceptions and that's why we're here.
This thing isn't that thin, both sides.
Okay,
Anything else anybody want to bring up or we adjourn?
yeah, I move. I
Is there
move
a
we adjourn.
second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting is adjourned.